In this video, we're going to be looking at question 3 of the May-June 2024 Business Studies Paper 2. This video or this lesson will assist you for your paper that you're writing on Friday for May-June 2024 exam. Question 3, it's business roles. It's part of your part B or section B of the entire paper. Let's see what we have. In 3.1, you are asked to name any 2 social rights of employees in the workplace. Imagine that you are an employee. What are your social rights that you expect in the workplace? Number 1, you'll expect that when you go to work, you get clean water, right? Water that is not contaminated with any kind of chemicals that can make you sick. Number 2, protection. You expect to be protected at work because you don't want when you are working, then some robbers come and take your phones, your wallets, you name it. So that is an example of your social right as an employee in the workplace. So what we expected for 3.1 to do, because you are just naming each right that you provide, you get 1 mark. Therefore, you are supposed to provide 2, and you are told already that you need to provide 2. Now, let's just see in the marking guide, what do we have? When we're looking at the marking guide, social rights of employees in the workplace, it's clean water, as I've already stated. Education. What does that mean? Education can come in 2 different ways. It's either the education that you get from your other subordinate and the leader or your line manager, through them teaching you and guiding you in the work that you're doing. Number 2 is the education that you receive by furthering your studies. That it means you are registering with UCT or any other professional body that you may wish to register with. Protection, I've already discussed that there should be security in place to ensure that no one can just come and rob you in the workplace. Healthy care. Healthy care can come in different ways. It's either some employees, they will have clinics in the workplace. Other employees, they will bring healthy professionals now and then. So those are the rights that are expected on the workplace, or rather in the workplace. Also, healthcare can come in the form of having first aid kits. So you're expecting that your employer have first aid kits in case of any form of injury that you might experience in the workplace. Now, so those were the social rights. You were just supposed to only provide 2 as you were asked, not more than 2. Because by providing more than 2, you're wasting the most valuable time in the exam, which you cannot afford to lose. Then we look down, outline the correct procedure to deal with grievance in the workplace. How do you deal with grievance in the workplace? That means that the employee or your leader is not treating you fairly or is not acting fairly towards you. How do you deal with a situation like that? So the grievance, it has to be reported verbally to your line manager or your supervisor. But now what happens if it happens that this grievance that you have, it is with your supervisor or it is with your manager? Now you need to report to the person that is 1 step higher than your line manager or your supervisor. It is important for us to see what is on the solution, then we can move to the next part. Now, looking at the solution, correct procedure to deal with a grievance in the workplace. An aggrieved employee must verbally report the incident or grievance to his or her supervisor or a manager. So let's just say now your grievance is coming from other employee in the workplace. Now you can correctly report it to the supervisor or the manager. It's verbally reported. Very important. Supervisor or manager need to resolve the issue within 3 to 5 working days. So this matter need to be resolved during the specified timeline of 3 to 5 working days. So this is the key point that you need to state when you're responding. So in a nutshell, you'll be done answering the question on the second point. Not really, because it's 6. Sorry, apologies, because it's 6 marks. You need one more. Should the employee and supervisor not be able to resolve the grievance, the employee may take it to the next level of management. Now, let's say the supervisor and yourself, you are not able to resolve this grievance within the specified time frame, then you need to go to the next level of management. Let us make an example that your manager is your line manager or your supervisor is a manager at work, and then the next person that follows is the senior manager. So if you and your manager you can't resolve the matter, it needs to go to the senior manager. This is a total of 6 marks, and each point that you're outlining, you get 2 marks, 2 marks, and 2 marks. By this time, you'll be done answering the question in the exam. The reason you are getting 2 marks is because you are outlining, you are stating and explaining. So by stating and explaining, you get 2 marks. It is different from the one above where you just needed to mention or state right. Here you are outlining, meaning to say you are giving the points, you are stating what should happen, which is different from where you're just listing. However, as I've always keep on saying, because here we are training you to be equipped for the exam, we're not going to end here. So we're going to continue and see what else you need to take into account. The employee may move to more formal process where the grievance must be lodged in writing or complete a grievance form. So now it happens that talking about this grievance on a verbal form, 3 to 5 days could not be met. Now you have to opt to go and lodge the formal and the written grievance form. The employee must receive a written reply in response to the written grievance. Now that your grievance is no longer verbal, it is now written, there should be a written reply for this grievance. A grievance hearing or meeting must be held with all relevant parties present. So the aggrieved as well as the one that the aggrieved is reporting should be present in the meeting. Minutes of the grievance meeting must be recorded, and any resolution passed must be recorded in the formal grievance form. So it is important to remember that there should be after grievance meeting or during the meeting, there should be the minutes for the formal grievance. Should the employee not be satisfied, then he or she could refer the matter to the highest level of management. Now everything has been done and the matter is now with the senior manager, but the senior manager still cannot resolve this matter. Let us make assumption that in the workplace, the next line of management after the senior manager is the CFO. Now the next line to be reported to, it's the CFO. Top management should arrange a meeting with all relevant parties concerned. Minutes of the top management meeting should be filed or recorded, and the outcome or decision must be recorded to the formal grievance form. Should the employee still not be satisfied, he or she may refer the matter to CCMA, who will make a final decision of the matter. So when does the matter go to CCMA? If all the internal meeting did not assist or make the employee or the aggrieved to reach the conclusion that all the steps taken were fair and reasonable based on the grievance that he has or she has discussed with all line of management in the company. The matter can be referred to the labor court or labor appeal court or constitutional court if the employee is not satisfied with the outcome taken by the lower court. Now let us make assumption that the employee is still not happy with any resolution by the CCMA, then it needs to go to the labor court or labor appeal court. And if it's not resolved, then it has to go to the courts that are higher. So now that takes us to the end of 3.2. As I've already said, you are guided by the number of marks. We are going through all this to prepare you for the exam that you're writing on Friday. However, what we are doing here, we are simply looking at the fact that after 3 points or 3 response you would have done in the exam. However, here we are just learning. So for the purpose of learning, we are not going to look only at the 3 points. We're just going to look at all the points that are available. Now, let us summarize again what we have here. The first part is that it has to be verbal, and after the verbal report has been stated to your line manager, the expectation is that 3 to 5 days this will be resolved. If it's not resolved, then it's taken to the next level of management, and then it will be made in a written form. The employee is expecting a response from the senior management, and there should be a formal meeting where the minutes are captured. If it happens that the employee is still not happy, the next higher management need to take this grievance into consideration and look at whether what has been done so far is correct or not. If senior management or high level of management still, after the conclusion they have imposed on the grievance, the employee is still, or aggrieved employee is still not happy, it goes to CCMA. If the employee is still not happy, it will go to the labor court. If still not happy, then it will go to constitutional court until the employee is happy that the resolution that has been concluded upon is fair and reasonable for him or her. Identify the human rights that are promoted by Midrich landscape. Midrich landscape in each statement below. We are identifying the human rights that are promoted by Midrich landscaping in each statement below. If you're looking at statement number one, employees' personal information is kept confidential. That's the first one. And the second one says the Midrich landscaping ensures that the workplace environment is free from hazardous products. So what are the key points here? Confidentiality and hazardous product. So what are the human rights that are presented by the Midrich landscaping here? It's privacy for the first one, because you need to keep private information of an employee confidentially. It should not be available to everyone. Hazardous products, you're looking at the safety of employees. the employees will not be safe if all the hazardous products are just floating around. Let's say, make an example. If on the floor, it happens that they just, when they're cleaning, they don't make sure that the floor is dry, or next to the place where there could be fire, they just pour the petrol on the floor. That means that they are exposing the employees to the danger of fire. Now let us see what we have in the solution. When you're looking at the solution here, the first one, where it talks about the confidentiality of the employee information, its privacy, as I've already stated. The second one, when they talk about the hazardous products, it is safety, as I've already stated, security, as well as protection of life. I've already stated to you to say it. The reason it is protection of life, it is because if anything that can harm the employees just kept lying around in the workplace, then the employees are not kept safe, or the employer did not ensure that there is no risk that might lead to employee either dying or being injured in the workplace. 3.4, explain ways in which business can deal with taxation or tax evasion as a type of unethical business practice. You need to explain the ways the business can deal with tax or tax evasion as types of unethical business practice. Now you need to understand, what is tax evasion. Tax evasion, it is when the business avoid paying tax when they should be paying tax. Let us say, for example, the company made a sale of 10 rand, and the total expense for the sale, it was 5 rand. Then, instead of declaring the entire profit, they decide to increase the expense. So that is a tax evasion, because you are defrauding SARS in the total amount that they should have taxed to you. So now let us look at the solution in terms of what other ways. Value-added tax, VAT needs to be charged on revertible items. So why is this a form of tax evasion that the companies normally do or can do? It is because when it's come to VAT, the input VAT is claimed from SARS. So what could happen? You'll find out on the items that are not VATable, the company might decide that they want to claim VAT on those items. So in that case, value-added tax needs to be charged on VATable items. On the other side, they might decide not to charge VAT on their sales of VATable item and not pay any amount to SARS. So what are the things that might make them not to charge, or not to pay SARS? It's because they want to reduce the price that they are billing to the customers, thereby boost their sale. For that reason, they'll decide to not charge VAT and then decrease the selling price and make more sales. Submit the correct tax return to SARS on time. So the other way to avoid tax evasion is that you submit the correct returns. The returns that you submit are correct and truthfully. There are no errors that are made on the submissions whereby the revenue is understated and expenses are overstated. If you're a provisional taxpayer, you need to pay provision and submit provisional tax on time. All products should be correctly invoiced and recorded. As I've already said, the other issues that the company may do is to reduce the selling price so that they'll boost sales and not charge the VAT or pay over the VAT to SARS. Disclose all sources of income for tax payment purpose. So what the employers could do, or the business or companies could potentially do, they might decide not to disclose all the income they receive. Let's say, for example, the business is a bank. However, the bank is also making revenue through renting out the properties. They might decide to say, we're going to disclose all the income that we've received from the bank services. However, we're not disclosing any income that we've received from the other side, which could be the rental income. In that case, they are doing a tax evasion because they're not disclosing all the income. So the way to avoid that is that all income is disclosed or declared during the submission of tax returns. Keep abreast with the latest SARS regulation and tax laws. In other cases, other companies might appear as if they're doing tax evasion, but it's the lack of knowledge of what are the latest regulations. Businesses that have value or evaded tax should apply for amnesty and declare their income. Now, let's just say in the past you've evaded tax, you did not pay tax in the correct way. Now you need to declare in future the income that you did not declare. Effective system to determine the appropriate amount of tax to be paid. You should employ well-skilled individuals. You should have system that can accurately calculate tax in the workplace or in your organization to ensure that the tax paid is accurate and correct. Business should keep accurate records of income statements or financial transaction. So all the types of invoices that are taking place should be kept correctly and also ensure that the financial transaction and the financial statements are in line. Employees' payroll need to reflect accurate deductions according to the progressive tax system. So what could happen here? There's a number of things that can happen. The employer might collect the PAYE but not pay it over to SARS, and they will use that money on their behalf. Number two, they might not progress the employees to the next tax bracket and continue to pay SARS on the lower tax bracket. Make sure that all financial records are checked and audited. So it is important to ensure that all the financial records are checked and audited. That is why the big companies need to have their financial statements audited so as to ensure what SARS is getting is accurate and a true reflection of what they should be getting. That takes us to the end of 3.4. So what is important here? You had a total of 4 marks. Each point that you raised and 2 marks. Therefore, you only needed to raise 2 points. And then you will have gained a total of 4 marks. The rest that we have discussed, it was important for us to go through and discuss it. However, it is important for you to also remember that in the exam room, you cannot waste time. So you need to provide exactly what you have been asked. In this case, you should only provide 2 points or ways that the company or business could deal with the tax evasions or tax matter. Then let us look at 3.5, which is our next question. Discuss 2 problem solving steps. Any 2 problems or problem solving steps. So you need to make a discussion. Now, the number of ways that you can solve your problems, right? So, number 1, in order for you to solve the problem, you must identify the problem. You can't solve a problem without identifying it. Once you've identified it, you need to define it. Define the kind of problem that you have that need to be solved. And then you need to identify possible solution for the problem. How are you going to address the problem that you have defined? You evaluate alternative option. Which option is going to be the best option? Then you will have to select the most appropriate solution. Develop action plan and solution. You could be implementing the suggested action plan and solution. The number of ways you can deal with problem solving. Now let's just see what we have in the solution to address this matter. If you're looking at the solution, the first part is identifying problem. As I've already said, you need one of the best steps to solve the problem is to identify the problem. There might be a problem, but you cannot identify where the problem is. You see there's a problem, but you don't know where exactly this problem is. I can make an example. You can see there's a water leakage, but you don't know, or you don't see where it's coming from, you know. Then you need to acknowledge that there is a problem. Identify the exact problem. What has led to the leakage of the water? Break down the problems into smaller or separate parts that are easier to resolve. It might happen that the water is leaking because it's coming on different angles or different areas. Now, once you understand where exactly it's coming from, then you are in the position where you are much better off. Because now you can see where it's coming from and get the expert to deal with the matter. Define the problem. Name the problem by stating exactly what the problem is. You've called the experts, they've realized, here is the problem where the water is coming from. Now you name the problem and state exactly what the problem is. Find different ways to defining or of defining the problem. Define the possible causes of the problem. The nature of the problem must be precise. Gather and as much information as possible to establish the cause of the problem. The other step, identify possible solutions to the problem. Now you know what's the problem. Identify all different possible outcomes to solve the problem. Use creative thinking strategies to generate a wide range of solutions. What will be the solution to solve this problem? Focus on generating as many ways as possible through creative thinking. Collect as many ideas as possible and find the best idea. Decide on this one strategy to follow. You can have a number of strategies, but the resources available for you, it's not enough. Therefore, you need to select one, which is the best strategy to solve your problem. Evaluate alternative solutions. Use critical evaluation and analytical skills to evaluate each solution. Consider the advantages and disadvantages of each alternative solution. It's an evaluation. Now you're looking at all the alternatives, you're using critical thinking and analytical skills to select the best. Select the most appropriate solution. Set a criteria for the best solution in terms of experts such as time, cost, risk involved. Identify the most relevant solution to be used. The best solution should match the size and the resources of the business. If the solution is not appropriate, the business should go back to defining the problem. If you realize that you've selected the solution but it's not working, that means you did not define correctly the problem. You need to go back and redefine the problem. Develop an action plan or solution. Arrange the necessary resources and delegate tasks. Who's going to do what? How are we going to get money to do the project? Establish a timeline for implementation and select deadline. When I'm expecting to complete the project or solving the problem that we have, there should be a deadline, unless the workers will work forever. They can take years just solving a very minor problem. So make sure there are deadlines that are set and we know when that need to be concluded. Implement the suggested action plan or solution. Carry out the planned action or solution. Communicate delegated task or deadline to employees. Monitor the implementation of action plans or solution. Test the action plan or solution continuously to improve the effectiveness of action plan. Check or track if progress made is in line with objectives of the action plan. Then monitor the implementation of the action plan and solution. Test the action plan, solution continuously to improve effectiveness of the action plan. If the action plan is not monitored, many things could go wrong because no one is there to check and track. Check and track if progress made is in line with objective of the action plan. And then when you're looking at the last one, evaluation of the implementation of action plan and solution. Now the implementation has taken place and now you need to evaluate the solution. Assess whether the problem has been resolved or solved partially or entirely. Is the problem that was defined resolved now or part of it has been resolved? Unresolved problems should be recognized, reformulated, revised to ensure that improved action plan or solution is in place in the future. Let's just say, for example, there were two leakage in the sink and only one has been resolved. Now, the one that is not resolved still need to be resolved. Though there should be the one that is not resolved need to be resolved by obviously getting employees to work on it. So this was a maximum of 6. Mark the first 2 only. It is very important for you to understand that each stage that you provide, it's 2 marks, and explaining it or defining it is another 4 mark. So you just needed to provide only 2. Use the mark as a guide. So if you see here, we're just going to get all the marks by only listing the 2 of the steps. During the class, your teachers would have took you through the rest, but you just needed to provide 2. The step does not have to be in any order because they just asked you for any, discuss any. So there was no order that was required. You did not have to define to first by saying identify the problem and define the problem. You just even could start with conclusion or the last one that we looked at. So that is the nice thing about this question. You didn't have to list all of them. You just needed to list 2. And also, you did not have to write in sequence. Now let's see what we have in 3.6. 3.6, read the scenario below and answer the question that follow. So now we are back to scenario and answer. African designers, or AD, African designers apply the King Code principle for good corporate governance. AD developed a remedial program to reduce air and water pollution, which would protect the environment. Identify the key code principle applied by AD. Motivate your answer by quoting from the scenario above. So now they are applying the King 5. The King 4. Okay. So they are applying the King 4. Obviously, the King Code principle. So now, by reducing air and water pollution, they are showing that they are responsible citizens. Therefore, in the part of the King Code principle, it is a responsibility. And obviously, the reason you are saying that is because they are reducing the air and water pollution to protect the environment. So identify the King Code principle, apply it, and motivate. And number two, explain any one other King Code principle for good corporate governance that AD could apply. So any one of the King Code principle, you really don't have to state all of them, just any one. The number of things that they can obviously apply. One of them, it could be transparency. What does transparency mean? It means the board ensure that the company ethics are effectively implemented. Now let us look and see the number of Clean Code principles that are available to you. You would have went through them during the class, but I want us to look at the solution and see how it looks like. Now, looking at the first one, which required the King Code as well as motivation. The King Code, as I've already said, it was a responsibility. And then the reason is because they implemented the program to reduce air and water pollution, which will protect the environment. Please note, do not award marks for the motivation if the code principle was incorrectly identified. So what does that mean? It means you had transparency here. If you have transparency here, even if the motivation is correct, you would have gotten 0. So it is important that you understand all the King Code principles before you go and write on Friday, as that what will be looked at as opposed to any other thing possible. Now, let's move to 3.6.2. 3.6.2, you are supposed to state any King Code principle or apply any King Code principle. So I have stated to you, it's more than one in addition of responsibility. Therefore, let us look at the scenario. So for the principle, you are going to get 2 and explanation 1. When we're looking at 3.6.2, what we see here is transparency. The decision or action must be clear to all stakeholders. So what does that mean? Whatever that the directors are communicating to the shareholders, it must be the similar communication that is made to the employees as well as the public, provided the same content is required. That means they are transparent, they are not lying or hiding any information. Staffing and other process should be open and transparent. When it's come to appointment, no one should be left behind when they should be promoted or when they should be hired with no clear reason. Employees, shareholders, directors should be aware of employment policy of the business. Auditing and other reports must be accurate, available to shareholders and employees. So that means your integrated report is accurate. The directors did not maybe instructed or directed the auditors to give them the good opinion when they know that the books are not doing well. Regular audits should be done to determine the effectiveness of business. Business deals should be conducted openly so that there is no hint or sign of dishonest or corruption. What does that mean? If the business is the construction industry, they must not bribe for tenders. So if they bribe for tenders, that will show the sign of dishonesty and corruption, and then the transparency will not be observed for the company. Business should give details of shareholders' voting right to them before at the annual general meeting. The board of directors must report to both the negative and positive impacts of the business on the community environment. They should not choose to only report the good things, because by reporting only the good things that are happening in the company, that shows the lack of transparency. Or rather, you would have selected accountability. There must be regular communication between management and stakeholders. Business should appoint internal and external auditors to audit the financial statement. Board should ensure that the company's ethics are effectively implemented. Business should be accounted or responsible for their decision or actions. Business should represent accurate annual report to shareholders at the annual general meeting. Top management should ensure that other levels of management are clear about their roles and responsibility to improve accountability. Any other relevant answer obviously will be marked. So mark the first one only. It is important that you do not waste your time by providing the solution which is not required. You will only requested one. So only one additional king code principle was supposed to be added. Do not award the marks for responsibility as the king code principle. And the reason for that is because you have already mentioned it. That take us to the end of 3.6. Now let's look at the next question. The next question is 3.7. Discuss storming as a stage of team development. Let us get it together and look at what we have in the solution when regard to storming as a stage of team development. Teams go through a period of unease, conflict after formation. Different ideas from team members will complete for consideration. Will compete for consideration. Team members open up to each other's and confront each other's ideas or perspective. Tension, struggle, argument occur and upset team members. They may be power struggles for the position of the team lead or team leader. In some instances, storming can be resolved quickly. In other team never leaves the stage. Many teams fail during the stage as they are not focused on their task. This phase can become destructive or negatively impact the team. Performance, lower motivation if allowed to get out of control. This stage is necessary or very important for the growth of the team. Some team members tolerate each other to survive the stage. So the storming in the team or the team development is when each and everyone is bringing the point behind for any projects that they need to get results for. There might be a lot of differences between the team, and then those differences, if they're not resolved professionally, then the team might not be successfully on any projects they're working on. Everyone will be competing with each other and they'll be fighting for their answer to be considered in the project. So if the team cannot resolve at this stage their differences, then the team might not survive the stage. Let us look at the last question for the question number 3 of Machen paper. Recommend ways in which business could deal with language as a diversity issue in the workplace. So now we all know that in different working areas, you're not going to find only Zulu speaking or only English speaking. However, there will be a number of languages. And the reason that now we have, or in South Africa, we have English as obviously the best form of communication or the form of communication, especially in the workplace, is to resolve the issues of the language barrier or language diversity in the workplace. Now, let us look at the ways that the business could deal with the language diversity in the workplace. So provide training in the official language of business. Let's say, for example, the business is based in Zululand. In Zululand, most of the client for that business will be Zulus. So any person that does not understand isiZulu should be trained for isiZulu. No worker should feel excluded in meeting conducted in one language only. So in the work where there are a lot of people speaking Afrikaans, there are other candidates or employees who doesn't speak Afrikaans, then they should ensure that they divert to English, which everyone would understand. Employ an interpreter so that everyone can fully understand what is being said in the meeting. Now, let us say, for an example, there is one or few employees that doesn't understand, for example, Afrikaans, and the presenter or the person in the meeting will be speaking Afrikaans, then the interpreter should be hired or employed to assist the English speaking employees. All business contracts should be in an easy to understand language. In most cases, it will be plain English and should be available in language of choice for relevant parties signing the contract. Now, let us make an example that the people that are signing contracts are speaking Afrikaans and isiZulu. They should be copies of the contracts that are in isiZulu and Afrikaans. Business may specify what all communication should be in one specific language only and expect employees to have certain level of fluency in that language. Let's take us to the end of this question, which was question 3 of the last year of May June past paper. Thank you so much for listening up until this far. Can you please follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel? And all the best for your paper 2 exam on Friday.